Some people have asked, what is it like to travel by helicopter? This is what it's like.
Big differences about flying by helicopter versus traveling in a car is that you have to do a lot of planning beforehand. You can't just like hop in the helicopter and go. For example, would be like fuel. You have to really think about where you're going to get it.
Even if it's a place you've been before, you know the hours they're open, sometimes they'll run out of fuel.
That is such a good point, yeah. So you have to check at the airport. They have a thing called NOTAMs, Notices to Airmen, and those are things that will say, oh no, the fuel pumps are out. You can't use them. That's happened to me. I had that happen on a recent flight, and luckily I was able to make it to an adjacent airport, but you really have to do your planning and do your research, otherwise you might get stuck somewhere.
And build in a good margin of error just in case something else goes wrong.
That's true. When you're on the ground, weather is less critical, but when you're flying, there's all sorts of things that can screw up your schedule. So if you definitely need to be somewhere, let's say for a meeting at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, you have to leave a bunch of margin because let's say if there's clouds, clouds, that can keep you from flying to where you want to fly, or winds. A big headwind could be a real problem. There's all sorts of variables.
Traveling with a kid is interesting, too, because there are no bathroom breaks up here.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. You really have to whiz before you depart. Are you sure you don't need to go? But are you sure? Yeah, because like right now, so like we're currently between Camarillo and our final destination for tonight, which is going to be up in San Luis Obispo. And there are a couple places we could stop if we had a sudden emergency. We could stop in Santa Barbara if we needed to, but we're still 20 minutes out.
Uh-oh.
That's a long time to wait when you really got to whiz.
With kids, they really have to be at an age where they can compose themselves if needed. Because being quiet for you to make calls and
control their bodies too. When we flew when she was younger, the idea of having her be back there was kind of scary because if she has like a tantrum, what do?
That's a lot of flaily little feet thanks to your controls.
By the way, I'm just going to fly over this.
What is that?
This is one of the reasons. There's going to be a lot of negatives and challenges that we're going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about one thing, which is that you see things you would never see if you were on the ground. So it looks like maybe there's a little bit of a fire happening over here. Not that this is what we're looking for, but there does seem to be a brush fire, and you do see interesting things. No joke, I saw a palm tree on fire the other day. It's the first time I've seen a palm tree on fire, but I wouldn't have seen it were I not in a helicopter.
The other thing to keep in mind is that we always bring our own food and drink because what's available at an FBO, which is a fixed base of operation?
Fixed-based operator, yeah. That's basically the people that get you fuel and take care of your pilot's needs at an airport. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's multiple. They vary in quality.
Oh my gosh, sometimes there's a whole, wide, amazing selection to choose from, with ice cream bars and microwave burritos, and you could feast for days, and sometimes there's just water.
So you really have to think about what supplies you'll need, and then also what supplies you hope you won't need. So things like emergency preparedness is a really big thing. So we have extra water on board if for some reason we had to set down somewhere inhospitable. We're flying through California, but even then, there are spots where there's just nobody around. And so the other thing I've got a satellite communicator. So if we have to set down and we're in a field in the middle of nowhere, we can always reach out and contact people. And then other things too. So later in our trip, a couple days from now, we're going to be flying around San Francisco and over watery areas. And I really minimize how long I'm over water. I always try to stay within glide distance. But even then, if you're flying over water, you have to think about having flotation devices for all of the occupants, just because that's a good, safe move.
Look at all that traffic down there. Oh my gosh, I'm glad we're in the air.
Are you kidding me? That is such a good segue. Yeah, no, that's one of the advantages. In fact, we'll sprinkle in some advantages too. In California, especially through LA, helicopter travel is very quick. It's a great way. It's direct. The road right now, the 101 freeway, is kind of weaving back and forth, and we're just going straight ahead. And when it's nice and smooth, the helicopter flies quick and right to where you need to go. So you do actually save a lot of time with helicopter flight.
When you are packing all those extra supplies, you have to also leave room for our stuff, like our personal items.
Yeah, so that's one consideration that you don't necessarily think about with cars. You might run out of space if you're driving a very small, like a Geo Metro or something like that.
Oh, totally.
But you probably won't run out of weight. And in the helicopter, we have to consider both. So the R44 is actually pretty roomy. Underneath the rear seats, there are areas big enough that you can put rollaway bags. You can't overstuff those rollaway bags, but you can put them under there. And there's room for cargo underneath the front seats, too. The thing is, you can never fill it so high that it gets impedes too much on your butt space, because these seats are made to deform in a crash. So you need to leave some room under there for them to do their job. And then we're a family of 3, so we can use the seat space over here and the floor space. So, you know, we can kind of get the job done. But you do have to think about it. And obviously weight is a thing. We're flying close to sea level here, so performance isn't that big a deal. But if we were flying up to the mountains and we've got all this weight on board, then you really have to think about what the performance of the helicopter is going to be with all that weight on board.
So another consideration when flying is cost.
I'm going to interrupt you. I did circle track racing at this little dirt track here, and it was one of the most fun things. And what was really cool is that we flew the helicopter here, me and my buddy Zach Vlasic, and we came out here, got a rental car, and then flew on that cool race track, that dirt track down there, and it was a big old time. Helicopter adventures. Sweetie, carry on.
So you use 100 LL fuel, and that costs about $4.73 per gallon, which isn't that much more than fuel for your car, but you burn through it so quickly.
It's way less efficient than driving a car, and those costs add up. And then also the cost of fuel really varies depending on where you are. If you've just gone to Santa Monica Airport and you want to fuel up and they have to send the fuel truck over, it can be a lot more expensive. I'm going to add one more thing, too, which is that cars are complicated machines, but they exist on the ground, so if something breaks, it's not that critical. With helicopters, it really matters. So right before this trip, I had an engine issue, and that engine issue was mysterious, and luckily, I was able to take the helicopter to my mechanic, and then they promptly jumped in on the issue and figured out there was a fuel issue to one of the cylinders, and they got a part repaired or replaced and installed, and we were ready to go, and I thought our entire trip was going to be canceled, but thank you CRM for getting the helicopter all sorted so incredibly quickly. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. And making sure that the aircraft is in tip-top mechanical shape beforehand is really, really important. I mean, I have done long road trips in like really clapped out cars, and you just can't do that with the helicopter, especially if you're like somewhere unfamiliar, because I mean, it's a Robinson R44, it's a fairly common helicopter. Somebody nearby will probably be able to work on it, but are you sure? Like,
you want to be sure.
I want to be sure.
So basically, if you're traveling by helicopter, you have to be really flexible with the time you arrive. There might not be fuel where you go, weather might interfere, you might have a mechanical issue. For safety reasons, never have to get where you want to go, right?
That is 100% true. Our friends over at Flying Eyes, Jordana, she once talked about being on pilot's time, and it really is a separate thing where you just have different considerations, and the more you rush and you force yourself to be somewhere at a specific time, the more likely it is you're going to cut corners and take unnecessary risks. Look at those surfers. Now, this is a really good segue into all the good stuff, though. If you look off the nose there, that sunset is remarkable.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, flying up the coastline, the California coastline here with the family, I mean, this is really wonderful. If you don't care for this kind of stuff, then all of the inconveniences it took to get to this moment are not worth it. It's just a stupid expensive way to travel around. I mean, there's the helicopter cost, the insurance cost, maintenance costs, fuel, the pilot training and having my licenses, and all the stuff that goes into doing this. It's really, really inconvenient. However, if you love it, and I mean really, really love flying, then this is kind of the best. Hey kiddo, what is your favorite thing about traveling in a helicopter?
Being high up, because I like being high up.
Oh, that's a really good thing that you get to do in a helicopter. What about you?
I really appreciate being able to get places quickly. Like when we go visit family, it's a much faster journey, especially over holidays where traffic can clog the roads and it takes twice as long to get there. I really appreciate having this as a resource.
That's true. My lady hates to wait. And then I guess my favorite thing about flying by air is that I get bored very, very easily. And this is an activity where I'm always deeply engaged in what's happening, so I never get bored, and I get to bring the family along. So it's kind of like driving in a car, except with nonstop action that keeps my brain deeply, deeply engaged. Sweetie, it's getting dark out there. I think it's time for the ceremonial removal of the flying eyes. Real quick, tell everybody why you love your flying eyes.
I really love using these. First of all, they're easy to take on and off, even under a headset, because they have super thin temples. They have very flexible frames, and you can just pop these magnetic sunglasses off.
Yeah, that's a very cool feature of the ophthalmic line of flying eyes. You always look cool, but sometimes you can protect yourself from an unrelenting sun. Although right now, Mr. Sun is doing a great job with that sunset. Looking good out there.
I want to see it.
So that's a quick look at what it's like to travel by helicopter. Do you guys have any questions that we haven't answered? If so, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. We do car reviews and we do helicopter travels and that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to see more of this kind of thing, feel free to subscribe. And if you like this video, feel free to click the like button. Family, I think we've done a great job. Normally I'd administer high fives, but I'm going to fly the helicopter.
You do that.
Sweetie, do you want to be in charge of high fives?
May I have a high five? I'm going to just tap you on the shoulder. And you, come get your high five.